We got a sprinter, 5'5", no pants, unkempt, portly.
All right, we are back for episode 2 of our back to school season. I cannot believe that we're finally covering this movie because I think Michelle and I have been talking about incorporating this into like every single season possible without any connection. And this one actually has a great connection. It's, takes place in a high school, but it's about going to college. So not exactly like the start to the school year, but more of the end of the school year. We have Lisa joining us for another episode. She is, of all people, an Orange County aficionado, so we had to bring her in. Lisa, what are your first memories of watching this movie, and just any like background you can share of why you think this made its way into the Tropiano circle of favorite movies?
First of all, thanks for having me back. Once you guys reached out to me about this, I was like, oh, this is going to be such a good one. I don't think I saw this in 2002. I don't remember the first time I saw it, specifically where I was, but I do know that we had it on DVD. So at some point, somebody got it on DVD, and I probably watched it at home, but it's possible that I didn't watch it until I was in high school. And then like those years where DVDs were popular, we would just cycle through movies. So different watching it as an adult, and definitely was a testament to how long it's been since I've seen this movie.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Michelle brought this into our lives. That's the only thing I can really think of, because I don't think this was a movie that you and I were hanging out and watching on our own when we were younger.
Yeah.
So
I was not allowed to see a PG-13 movie in the movies for sure in 7th grade. I mean, yeah. I went and saw Freaky Friday in the movies like a year later. So those are the type of movies I was seeing at this time.
Michelle, we need you. We need your brain.
I'm going to be no help here. I was thinking that this was a movie that you guys introduced to me because I don't remember seeing this in the movies. I don't remember this from college, but I feel like the three of us kind of had a nice few years together when I moved home from college. And Lisa, you were starting high school or beginning of high school. And Laura, you were middle school. And I felt like we watched, I feel like a lot of these movies that we've covered in multiple seasons have kind of fallen in this like early 2000s time period where we were watching the DVDs. And I assume that this was just another one of those. So how about you, Laura? Any intel?
No, but
where this came from?
What I was thinking of while rewatching it this morning was I must have known this at some point, but when I was watching the credits, I couldn't believe that Mike White wrote this movie, and I just had this light switch go off of, oh, of course I like this movie, because also he clearly has a friendship with Jack Black because he's in School of Rock. He also wrote Nacho Libre, so it kind of came full circle of why this probably made its way into comedy movies that I like. And it's been really cool in recent years because he's, the creator, the writer of White Lotus, that he's kind of, his comedy has made his way back into my life in a little bit more of a darker way. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that this morning.
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
I mean, I caught that he was in it, as well as Harold Ramis, who wrote Ghostbusters and like other really impressive things. Mm-hmm. He's the one who plays the admissions director.
So great.
I was like, I just wrote a note, like, I'm so confused why he's playing this part, but
yeah,
there's just like,
oh my gosh, that's so great.
And it all kind of makes sense because Mike White is in this teacher role, and that comedy really, I think, comes through in some parts of School of Rock. I'll give you guys a teaser. We are definitely covering that movie on this season. So it all was meant to be that we've released Orange County in the same season as this. So we might just have to rebrand this as our Mike White season.
How about MTV Films? I feel like we probably talked about this during our Napoleon Dynamite episode, or maybe I feel like this is something that I would have brought up. But I was looking to see what other movies were released by MTV Films, and I just felt like there was like this moment where it was this big thing, and now it's called MTV Entertainment, and I don't think it's exactly the same thing as it used to be. But other than Napoleon Dynamite, they also produced Varsity Blues, Zoolander, and like all the Jackass movies. Those were what I thought were the most notable ones. Do you remember that, kind of like the icon that they showed at the beginning of the movie?
Yeah, I think when I think back on MTV Studios and movies that came out, some of the ones you just listed, I don't have a deep connection or, I guess, memories of saying, oh, I love MTV movie studios, movies that come out. I think it was just definitely of the time. It was kind of after, obviously, the explosion of MTV, which I didn't grow up as much with. So I feel like this was kind of a new era of content and how we were watching movies. Obviously, DVDs were really big. So it makes sense, the format we were watching this in.
When I watched the movie this time, I took that into consideration more. Like, it was definitely targeted to like a teen audience. And I feel like they really like went hard with that. And I also feel like throughout this movie, I was just like, the obsession with like Orange County was just like years after that. It was like everywhere. Isn't it so odd that that was like in the spotlight in movies and shows and the OC and Laguna Beach?
Yeah, I think it was
super popular.
This very shiny toy that felt very far away, at least for East Coasters. I think even growing up when we would come out to California in middle school and high school, we usually do some trips to visit family in LA, and it always felt that Orange County was kind of this magical place where all of the really cool teenagers on MTV and reality shows were living, and they had a very different life full of surfing and beach parties and going to colleges in California, which I think just felt a completely different world from where we were growing up.
Did this movie predate the show The OC, Real Housewives, Laguna Beach?
The OC first episode date was August 5th, 2003. The first episode date of Laguna Beach was September 28th, 2004. So, and this was so, you know what? I think that Mike White started the Orange County craze.
Totally.
Mike White, we owe it all to you for giving us Seth and Ryan and Lauren and everyone from both of these shows. So thank you.
Did you guys also notice Jake Kasdan?
I definitely saw his name.
I know he like directed New Girl episodes. I didn't know who any of these people were when the movie came out, but obviously I have more of an appreciation now for like the cast, which is like such a ridiculous cast.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll like get a little bit more into this with what we liked, but I was having this thought a little bit more of the Hollywood connections that kind of fell along with this movie, because there's some really big names attached as cameos, but also people who obviously have gone on to be very successful. But I think the amount of times I've seen this, I didn't put all these connectors together of the star power that it has in very subtle ways.
I appreciated the cast so much now. Seeing Chevy Chase and John Lithgow, like, again, and Catherine O'Hara, through their entire career, they had already done so much in like the 80s and the 90s up until this point, but that their careers have continued. I'm just like, this was great finds and great people who work in comedy. I loved how they like dumbed down so many of like the teachers and administrative staff, the stupidity of like the school counselor and his English teacher when he took English so seriously. Incredible. That writing was so brilliant. Basically just like adults acting like children.
Did you feel like you had, of everyone who was in this movie, someone that you felt like stood out the most to you?
I mean, I want to say Catherine O'Hara, but I don't know. I also love Colin Hanks. Like, even though he's the main character and he's supposed to be like the serious character, I just feel like they casted him so well for that role. We all love Tom Hanks so much. And I know like he's his own person and his own actor, but just like those little nuances with him where you like know like he has the same skill as his dad. It's like really just fun to see. But I guess like overall I'd say Catherine O'Hara because she's just like flawless throughout the entire movie.
How about you, Laura?
Yeah, I mean, I will always love this movie from like a comedic approach, but I think watching it again this time, I definitely don't love it as much as I think I did when I was younger. It's not even like a nitpick of things that are wrong. I think it's just there are so many other movies and comedy that I love, and I think the moments that I appreciate the most are with Catherine O'Hara. She just takes it to a completely different level. I've always loved Jack Black, and I think his scenes when I was growing up were always the ones that I quoted because they were so absurd, but I actually didn't find myself laughing as much with some of his lines. I think it was more of like the childish comedy and some of the physical comedy. Like, I won't say this is one of my favorite scenes, but just as an example, like him sitting in front of the TV and watching SpongeBob while high was I was actually belly laughing. And then, you know, Catherine O'Hara's entire persona, and then that they are able to incorporate that as like his mom was kind of one of the main things that Marcus Skinner pointed out that he was writing in his story, because of course she's going to be one of the most entertaining characters. But I think I spent a lot of this movie enjoying the moments of them all in the home interacting with each other, and even one-on-one conversations with him and Lance, and not as much the background of the school. I think the 2000s, there's so much nostalgia for us growing up during that time period, but I wasn't in high school during this time, so I don't think I have as much of a connection because it felt a little far out of reach for me, and I didn't really want to spend as much time there. I just wanted to watch the chaos unfolds in the house, and even, you know, his interactions with his dad are hilarious. But I agree. I think that Colin Hanks is so well cast for this movie. He just plays, you know, someone who's trying to get out of high school and but also doesn't know what he wants. Like, I think it was very on brand for someone that age to be like, I want to be a writer, and have such a defined idea on a whim of what he wants to do, but it's very vague and not really like drawn out of really what he means by that. But I thought that was very accurate for someone who is going to college and frankly shouldn't really know what they wanted. But yeah, I think that my favorite parts are just kind of the side conversations and the comedy with the family, and probably not as much with the supporting characters in school.
My first thing on my list, even above Catherine O'Hara, was Colin Hanks. I think I just love him as an actor and everything I've seen him in. And to Lisa's point about him being Tom Hanks' son, is that I think we're probably a little like predisposed to like him because we're seeing these familiar characteristics, but then seeing someone who's like more our age, his character was like relatable even though he was a guy. And but that's like kind of how, like, as you described it, Laura, like, you know, we can have these kind of like earnest dreams when we're in high school, or things that we think that we want, but also like I like how they portrayed it as he still was so immature and did not really know what he wanted. So I thought that they kind of like wrote that really well.
Again, this time, as soon as I recognized that it was Mike White who had written this, I looked up, you know, I don't think it's a direct storyline of how he grew up, but he definitely pulled from his personal life. I don't know if he grew up in California, but he obviously went on to be a film writer, so I think he was able to pull that from personal experiences, and it shows. So I think that's why we probably all gravitate towards Colin Hanks, because he probably you know, his casting was probably the most important decision of this movie, and it really came through in the script and how he was kind of so nervous and wanted all these things, but also had this level of like, naivete. So I think it was just great.
Yeah, I think also knowing that this was Colin Hanks' kind of like first big starring role, he probably felt pressure to perform, and I think that he really did. He rose to the occasion. I think he had a lot of range, and in thinking about how good Catherine O'Hara was and how good he was, I thought that the scenes specifically that were just the two of them were really strong. It felt like two seasoned actors together, even though, Colin Hanks was kind of a newbie at this point. Not just like the comedic moments, but there was some kind of a little bit of serious stuff mixed in there too. And I thought that those scenes played really strong.
I just wanted to bounce back to what Laura said about like not loving it as much. I feel like I felt the same. Like by the time the movie was over, I was like, oh, like I just remember being obsessed with it. And like you realize like it is very like simple, and it definitely like lacks substance, but it like is what it is. It's like the type of movie it's supposed to be. I still appreciate the humor, but like I didn't think the jokes were all as funny throughout too. But we've also like quoted them so many times also. So it's just like one of those things.
Yeah, it's almost like the strong comedy moments are so strong, and then the rest are kind of fall flat.
Yeah.
But as saying it's a little bit of a mediocre, doesn't have a lot of substance. I think that this is actually a really good just example for people that this is a very tight script. It's a pretty short movie, and I think it's very well paced. I couldn't believe how short it was. I watched this on Pluto TV, so there were commercials involved, and it still went by really fast, which I do appreciate because we should unfortunately all have much longer attention spans, but I have probably said this in every season. I really miss movies that are between around an hour and 45 minutes, an hour and a half. It was a nice time to be alive when MTV Studios was dropping these.
I agree. I thought that the script was really tight. There weren't really any parts that slogged, and I liked how it started and didn't realize that they hadn't started rolling the credits yet. So I got really invested right away, where he's telling the entire backstory. And the moment where they that ended and they cut to like the title screen and started rolling the credits, I was like, this is great. This was like a really strong opening to this movie. I know that there's like, at least in writing fiction, people say like, don't give too many details, like right at the beginning, like give the audience a chance to like catch up. But personally, I prefer to have like as much information as I can right at the beginning, so I know what's going on, so I'm not being the annoying person who's like, wait, what's happening? Should we know who this person is? Like, if I think that like I may have missed something, that completely distracts me for the rest of the movie. So I thought that this was a really great way to start a movie.
I was laughing a lot. It was so over the top where he's describing his different reactions while reading the book, and when he's like, oh, when I was sad, I was really crying, and they just cut to him sobbing on the beach while everyone's partying, and that felt very Hanks to me in a very comedic way. So again, I think it was like those moments with Colin Hanks that I really appreciated.
Kind of forgot about that whole thing with like Lonnie too, which like ends up being like a significant part of the movie too. But like his friends are so ridiculous. Like I'm learning a lot from you guys because you know a lot about film. So like it's interesting for me to hear you guys talking about the script and what you're observing. You are right. It isn't a long movie. It's like an hour and 30 minutes, and they really just squeeze everything into that timeline. And
yeah, I feel like it just really moves along. Like they're always like moving into a next thing that Sean has to do, which I think makes us feel like we're kind of along in this journey with him, which I think works really well. It's so unrealistic, but Tanya's grandfather was called, and he came over at 5 p.m. that day, and it made the stakes so high. And they were like, how do we make this the most chaotic experience possible? Even though he tried so hard to make it normal. Her getting absolutely plastered, the fact that they make their way out to the pool by the end of the meeting, that Lance has no like wearing absolutely no clothes. Bob had a furniture shatter on his head earlier that day. He was bleeding. So it really heightens the comedy of that entire sequence. And I think they did it so well of really Mike White. I would hope he didn't actually have those experiences, but the fact that he was able to make it that ridiculous, it really now, like watching White Lotus, it makes sense that this is his tone, and he really leans into the ridiculousness of it.
Yeah, he does chaos really well.
Yeah. And really just so funny.
I also liked how they took this kind of Lonnie storyline, which you almost like dismiss it, even though it's kind of the thing that sets up the whole movie. And like you said, Lee, they really like squeezed everything out of it. Like they kept going back to it. They had like callbacks. They had things that were consequences of it, and comedic moments. My favorite of which is I love the little shot of them having his funeral, and they're all wearing black, but they're all wearing like black like swimwear.
I know.
But I also feel like now that we're talking about Laguna Beach, that I could see that happening. I could see it. It's not funny because it's in real life, but if one of the classmates passed away, I could see them all going to bathing suits.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
On a beach,
also,
yeah.
Now that I have it in my mind, like the Orange County related things, I feel I was getting very much like Arrested Development, like vibes with like the interior shots and everything. Like there's so many. It's wild. It's everywhere.
Big Orange County. They're really pushing who's ever on their marketing team did a good job during this time.
No.
It's funny that you brought up Arrested Development, because I was kind of relating this character of Sean to Michael Bluth, and kind of being this like the straight man who you love like in this really dysfunctional, chaotic family.
Yeah.
Totally. That's a really good connection. Maybe that's why I brought it up, because I just, it was like in my mind, like this poor guy with this like psychotic family.
All of the mini setups, even though they weren't like so funny, but him having his conversation with his dad and going to his house, and it's very hilarious and over the top, but then they have these moments of seriousness where it's like, it felt very natural, him saying, "You've never done anything for me," and just kind of walks out. But it's in a very high school way where they don't really know how to be expressing their emotions. So they're able to, again, I think the writing did a good job of hitting on those notes of comedy and also talking about, I don't want to make any speculations, but if Mike White really did have some of those experiences, he did a good job of including it. And we do spend a good chunk of the movie at Stanford, and I think I appreciated some of the interactions that he ended up having with Marcus Skinner, even though it was for a really short time. If they cut that out of the movie, I'm sure that would have been fine, but he wouldn't have had this kind of like big revelation. But I think they could have easily made him like an asshole and kind of made him like be like, oh, I don't want to be a writer, And I think, again, I think it was a very like tight script overall.
Yeah, for being a comedy, I thought that they did a good job of still keeping some of these serious moments in there without bringing the movie down. Another thing that I thought was noteworthy was, for a high school movie, I loved the relationship with his girlfriend, with Ashley, and that they didn't make their relationship or like them getting together or them breaking up like a through line of this story. It was just kind of like something that was happening in the background. It was like a guy in high school who had a girlfriend, and she was great, but I felt like someone else writing this would have taken that in a different direction.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that definitely is rare. I'm trying to think of like other movies where they just have like a girlfriend. When he was kind of like introducing her in the beginning, like her character, and he was like, she's so positive all the time that it's like hard to tell like if she's being serious about things. And I'm like, oh my God, this is all of us. Like,
yes, I was like,
yes,
all of
she
us.
doesn't want to be offensive or whatever. But then like she was positive throughout the movie, but then I like love that scene with Tanya where she like had to get her to call her grandfather, and she just like had that like side to her that she just turned on all of a sudden, but like in the name of being loyal to her boyfriend. Like it was so good.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, we haven't talked about all the characters, but Skylar Fisk was in Snow Day, and like that was it. That was the only thing I saw her in before then, but that was like a huge movie. So once I saw her again, I was like, wow, it's the girl
And
from
she's
Snow Day.
also a beautiful product of Hollywood because her mom is Sissy Spacek, who is
Yes.
absolutely iconic. So yeah.
Wow.
And she's a singer too.
Yeah.
She sings like, I think like backup for, you know, some like acoustic artists. So she's like a multi-talented actress.
She was a lovely character. And she's a
She
redhead,
was.
so we love her.
Really well written character. Like a lot of times I think these secondary characters are just, as we say in every episode, like super cartoony, which we get a lot of those in this. But I felt like she was like a unique girlfriend.
Yeah.
Who felt more like, I liked the details about how, like what you just referenced, Lisa, about her kind of like standing up to Tanya and being really loyal to her boyfriend was like very much in line with her being this person who's like into conservation and like saving animals and in a whole, she was very well molded.
Yeah.
So good.
I also am happy that we were able to get this other story of John Lithgow and Catherine O'Hara and them interacting together alone, because even though it was a short frame, but then also giving us Leslie Mann as part of this. So again, these were all side stories that were going on that obviously are all part of Sean's life, but didn't involve him in some of the scenes. And I thought that they were all really great.
I really liked the line that John Lithgow said when he was like, "She's not like you." To Catherine O'Hara. I'm like, that was really sweet. And then of course we get that great line at the end where Jack Black is like, "You banged Mom."
He's like, ugh.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. And I actually really enjoy the ending. The ending of them all being in the house together. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really tender moment of Catherine O'Hara and Jake having cereal together. And we kind of see this very soft version of her, because I like to think that she kind of went on this bender after all these horrible things happened to her, and she maybe wasn't as eccentric before all of that happened. So I think Lisa's starting to feel her Chardonnay that she's drinking.
I'm just thinking of that quote. I had sex with Bob 4 times for you so that they could live in that house. And if I didn't, we'd be eating lunch meat and clipping coupons.
There's a couple of great cameos in this movie. So there's Chevy Chase, Lily Tomlin, Ben Stiller, which I completely forgot about. But all great. Of all those, who was your favorite?
I mean, Lily Tomlin that character was so fantastic. I don't know if you caught this little detail or what its significance was, but it made me laugh. Our first introduction of her, when she's first meeting with Sean and when she says that he's a shoo-in, did you notice it? Like everything behind her is like decorated with like a happy birthday banner.
No.
I don't know. I feel like it just kind of fueled the story a little bit that this woman was like already checked out, but like even more so on that particular day, because maybe it was her birthday and they were having a celebration. I also really liked Ben Stiller. I'm going to save that though for later.
I guess I would probably say Ben Stiller, even though he had like such a small role. Chevy Chase, like they just put him in there with like his typical humor, like that he's had in like all the movies he's been in. But it was so funny that he was so dismissive of like the issue with the beach seals. I was cracking up at those scenes. I just thought it was like so, like I didn't appreciate it the first time I saw it.
Laura, how about you?
Probably Ben Stiller. I love Lily Tomlin, and that entire interaction is so over the top and hilarious. I think it was more so the concept of having a checked out guidance counselor above anything. I would be absolutely mortified if that happened to me. This is so stressful. But yeah, it's even we get Ben Stiller for 2 seconds, but he's so Ben Stiller about who he is. So it's so great.
I didn't say anything about Jack Black yet, but I kind of wanted to maybe leave it toward the end of the what do we love as maybe a segue into what we didn't love. Love Jack Black. His performance in this was great. But I agree with both of you. I think that the things that I was really laughing at when I was younger, like kind of weren't as funny to me anymore. And I just very recently was listening to an interview with him on Armchair Expert, which I feel like I bring up in like every other episode, but he's such a very, charismatic, but not in like a creepy way. He's just like a really naturally funny, likable person. I'm glad that I got to listen to that right before I watched this because you can see he's got the talent, he's got the skills, he's got the acting chops. And it almost makes me like annoyed that they made him be this character. And then I'll save the rest of my not so good things for the next segment. All right, so we're going to move into what we didn't like section, and I'm going to continue my Jack Black, not rant, but this is more of a discussion point. This movie made me think that so much of the comedy was centered around like substance abuse. And I'm wondering if in 2024, that's still funny.
Yeah. I just think that it took up so much of the movie and it didn't add as much. And I find it strange now that we clearly were very desensitized to that growing up because it was shown so much on TV and made it, and I guess was more in a comedic tone. But Jack Black is so funny and so talented that if they had just made it more of maybe like a scene or something that was included instead of making it his entire personality trait. And obviously some of the moments of Catherine O'Hara being really drunk when, they're coming over. But I think that there's like a line that needs to be drawn. I don't really know if I'm the person to be saying that because I don't have any direct experience with having those issues, but I don't know. I don't know.
I kind of looked at it in the light that I know with Jack Black's character, it was like a little crazy. Like he had all the pills and everything in his room and he was like obviously always high. But I feel like part of me wonders if the writers, aside from the time, the year it was, and maybe that was like more popular movies and TV, I feel like maybe they were like playing on people with money, people with a lot of money and like the issues that they can have. And like, I know those issues could, also happen with people without money, but just like specifically like access to like drugs and different pills and pain pills and whatever. And he had like all of this stuff. And like, remember that the two brothers like grew up in a wealthy family. Like both of his parents were like pretty well off before like the dad left. So I feel like they were just showing kind of like the dysfunction of the family was like that the older brother was so smart, but he like went down a wrong path, ended up taking drugs. And like, so then he was just like home and like kind of a recluse. And then Sean clearly is the one who's the most responsible. He basically is the caretaker of everyone, including his mom and his stepdad. So like even though like there definitely were moments where I was like, oh, this is like kind of cringy or like kind of a lot too much or whatever, maybe they wouldn't do it now. I feel like I was just like looking at it in the light that like people who have so much money and success can like fall really hard. And like the mom also like clearly like just throwing back like bottles of Chardonnay or whatever, like, you know, it just was what she became with like all of her hardships. But yeah, Jack Black's character, like, I should just mention it now. The thing that bothered me was more when he went to his dad's house and Jake was there. And then like Leslie Mann was like, take him upstairs and like give him his Ritalin. Like during that scene, like that was something that like I used to like laugh about. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, like in society, like that was that time, early 2000s, like kids were just being put on like anything, like Ritalin, things like that. That was like such a thing, you know? So I feel like I do appreciate it being accurate to the time. But yeah, like looking back on it now, I'm like, wow, like things were pretty bad.
Lisa, great points about, I didn't consider like kind of the origin of the family and them kind of like poking fun at this wealth can like do this to people.
Totally.
Like maybe having like too much access to stuff.
Yeah.
But I was also like, you know, as I had that thought, I was also torn on it because I think not just in this movie, but just movies and TV in general, like scenes where people are drunk are always really funny. I think because there's always this physical element to it, physical comedy. You know, we all three of us really love and gravitate toward. So it's not that I want it to completely go away, but at the same time, I mean, this is like they really hinge on, I mean, for Jack Black's character especially, I know they do a little bit with Catherine O'Hara's as well, but like this whole movie hinges on him being like, you know, drug and alcohol addict. Where, I mean, I think that this movie would work with him just kind of being like a wacky guy, you know, and not having that be a part of it. But curious what our audience thinks with this podcast and revisiting some of these old movies. I think that these are, you know, I don't think that we should ban movies. I think that we should have discussions about them and what has aged well and what hasn't. And I think this is just one of the things that has not aged as well.
Yeah. And Jack Black is just a funny guy. He just should keep doing his thing.
Yeah, I'm annoyed that he got like roped into that being his whole character because he could play anything and be magnificent.
Yeah.
I also listened to that interview, and it was one of my favorite conversations I've ever heard on that podcast. It was such a great conversation, and I feel like I appreciated him as an actor so much more after listening to that conversation.
Wasn't he like so likable?
Incredible. You can tell he like struggles kind of like being in Hollywood and still like having his privacy and this and that. But yeah, it was a really great conversation. So good.
We'll link to that. And Jack Black, you're always welcome on our show. We have many more movies that he's involved in that we want to cover. Laura, how about you? Was there anything that stood out to you that you didn't love?
I really didn't like the alt angsty teen music, but I also had like as the background songs, but I also had this note that I equally hated them because I just didn't like them, but I also loved it as an inclusion because it really felt very on brand for someone who was living in Southern California during this time and angry about their life and going to beach parties. So I think it was actually a smart choice, but I just did not care for them. As much as we love Colin Hanks, I hated Sean's outfits this entire movie. I wanted him to not be wearing what he was wearing. He needs a tailor really, really badly.
It was an unfortunate time for men's fashion, for sure.
Unfortunate.
So piggyback on your comment about the music. The song Butterfly that played multiple times in multiple ways throughout the movie. I just do not like that song. I don't like that. I hate that like kind of genre that I very much associate with the early 2000s, which is like rock people who are like trying to become friends with rappers. It's like kind of this, I don't know, this hybrid that does not work for me. I get that this is like an MTV film. I'm sure that that's why they chose to like shine a spotlight on this song, but especially the part where Ashley's like, kind of just singing along to it in her headphones. I'm like, this is really like, why does she wouldn't like this song? I know she wouldn't.
I don't know. I think of the time if there was that one song that everyone was listening to, like of right now, it's the Sabrina Carpenter album that everyone's listening to, and everyone loved Espresso and everyone was listening to it, so it could be accurate. Lisa, what about you? Is there anything you particularly did not enjoy?
The one note I took down was the clothes in the movie for like throughout. I feel like it was an all-time low in fashion, like across the board. Like I feel like I can't think of like one outfit where I was like, oh, they look put together. Like the hair was bad, the clothes were bad, like it was so bad. And I feel like Ashley's clothes were the ones that bothered me so much. That purple floral skirt with the flip-flops, like, and the fact that it was like one day and like you had to see her wear that, like I was just like, this is painful to watch. But she was nice, so I guess it made up for it. But like the clothes were so bad. And I also like took a note about Butterfly, like Crazy Town Butterfly, and like it was like a little cringy and like cheesy, like that scene with the cheerleaders. But the thing with Ashley listening to it, I don't know if she would listen to it, but she was friends with the popular girls, it seemed. She was kind of a chameleon. She was like in that group of friends, and then she was dating Colin Hanks and like just had a separate thing there. But I was not a big fan of the music, but like they just did the music that was appropriate for the time. So I guess that's all it was.
I have one last note. Laura, you mentioned that you liked the ending, and I did too. I thought that it was like nice to have almost like the whole cast in that one scene together. But I dislike the concept that he didn't go to Stanford. I don't think that people should stay home to be with their high school boyfriends or girlfriends.
But I don't
let
think
that be the reason.
I didn't think that's why he stayed home. I think that he had a revelation that his family and his relationships are important. But I think that what he took away from it was like, you don't need to be at a certain place to be able to write. You can be anywhere. So it probably, I like to think that he ended up going somewhere else, but this gave him time to do like a step back, because if he wasn't going there, then he didn't get into any other schools or didn't apply, so he couldn't go right away. Also, I know that it is like very comedic, but it's like the concept that people could just pay for their kids to go to school, which was obviously a very big scandal for a lot of celebrities in recent years. So pretty crazy stuff. I think that he made the right decision.
I did like that little note of like, oh, I guess the building burned down or something.
Yeah. So good. Well, speaking of, Lisa, do you have a favorite line and a favorite scene?
I think like the most memorable and funny one to me is when you're introduced to John Lithgow and he goes, if you do this, I will eat your face. It's so perfect. You see him in his office and like he's just fully immersed in his work, and you just get like an instant explanation of like the kind of person he is. And then favorite scene, I don't know. The whole visit with Tanya's grandparents is just like amazing. But I do have to say, actually, the scene with Lupe when Colin Hanks is like speaking to her in Spanish and the mom has no idea what's going on, and they have their own like secret little thing where like he's basically like her boss, and they have like a little like inside joke or whatever, and like it's chaotic in the beginning, but then like when he tries to like calm her down and keep her from quitting, it's so good.
Nice, underrated pick.
Yeah.
It's a good one. So many lines in this movie that I quoted growing up, but I think all of mine are Catherine O'Hara ones. I love what she says.
I'd like to propose a toast.
She's when she's talking about like how he thinks she's a bad mother, and she was like, I sacrificed Damien for you, and she was like, he was beautiful and Serbian. And I love her entire monologue just going off in front of Tanya's grandparents, where she says,
Yeah, the last few years have been really hard.
and Sean is just, he knows exactly what she goes. He's like,
Eh.
and then she just not holds back. I helped my former husband start his business. He left me for a 20-year-old that he met at the gym, and then I love that she says, like, he found them in a motel in La Jolla. And then she just ends at the end. She's like, and just one shitstorm after next. But I love that when the entire interaction where she says, he starts screwing around on me, and Tanya's grandmother's like, oh. I also, very underrated moment, but when the grandparents arrive and she appears from upstairs and she's walking down the stairs and she hits the painting by accident, and then she fixes it, and then just her delivery of, hello, welcome, and she introduces her whole name, like her maiden and middle name, and that she like burps some Chardonnay. So good.
Laura, I had the same note, and I thought that was one of the funniest moments of the movie, is when she was coming down the staircase and she knocks into the painting and then fixes it.
We also didn't talk about this. We should probably include this screenshot if you're watching on video, that we were all talking before getting ready, and when Lisa sent the meme of Catherine O'Hara in like the pink dress, and she has the curlers in her hair, and she says, I look like a piñata.
Yeah, I mean, I think that scene where Tanya's grandparents come over would win our award for if you had to show one scene of this movie to a friend to kind of like sum up or like represent what this movie is. I think that would be the clear winner. I mean, that's so much physical comedy, so many funny things, and so many funny lines that happen in it. So that's one of my favorites for sure. But my other favorite is the entire scene with Ben Stiller after they set the building on fire.
What's your name?
John.
What is it?
Joe John.
Name's Joe John?
Every bit of dialogue, like I'm cheating by including this as my favorite scene, because it's also like all of my favorite lines I think happen in that scene.
She started it, all right? Because she was like, I hate my job. I'm going to burn this mother down. And I said, you better not. You better not.
She said it was an electrical fire.
It was. It was a total electrical fire.
Ben Stiller is his delivery of just, again, kind of like being the straight man to Jack Black. Their dynamic works so well. Have the two of them been in anything else together?
Let me look this up.
Really
they were
good.
in Tropic Thunder together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
I don't know if we started saying this a lot, like when you and Allison started having kids and your kids were like running around like half naked, and we'd say like,
Why aren't you wearing your pants, Joe?
Definitely.
I also just love the entire setup of like, he clearly knows that he was in the building, but the fact that he says like that lady Mona over there.
Also, just like the quick scene with him, like after Sean leaves the frat party and he like goes back to find him, and he's like hiding in the bushes, and then he hears the siren and he's like jumps really quick. I was crying during that scene. It's so funny, and like he hops the fence and he's like fast escape.
I love how he has that like the prop like branch with the leaves that he's using to hide himself behind the bush. So good.
So good.
So I also love how Sean just like takes his suggestion to heart and he's like, sure, I could get you there in 3 hours. And like, he knows he's like a complete idiot, but he's like, he's gonna help me. Like, let's just go in the Bronco. The movie is so outrageous, but during this time period, and like when you're a senior waiting for your college acceptances, and like that is everything in your life at the time, like it was pretty accurate for like how invested he was in getting into that school, and like he would stop at nothing.
I have two more favorite lines. I like the exchange between Mona, who we didn't really give much love to, but she was fantastic, where she says, "Do you want me to call public safety?" And even just her saying that, like not the police, public safety, because they're on a campus, and then him responding with, "Do you want me to get naked and start the revolution?" So good. And then I think that this is something that we've quoted a lot, so maybe it's only funny to us, but I love the delivery of the two surfer friends. I can't remember when they say this, but it's when they're continuing the discussion about what they're going to do for Lonnie's memorial. And they say,
"We thought in Lonnie's memory, right? We could go down to Emerald Cove, we could take his board, and we could like push it out into the ocean."
I love that.
I love that.
And then I think one of them says after that, like, or blow it up or set it on fire or something like that. But
Yeah, I also love
So
their delivery of like,
Right, bro, this is his birthday, man.
Yeah, man.
Like his death birthday.
it's so earnest. They like don't have any other way to describe it.
not a good food movie at all.
Awful food movie.
Ugh.
I can't think of one thing that's eaten besides cereal.
I can. I don't know if anyone actually eats it or not, but I know that they take out like cheese and crackers before before the meeting with Tanya's grandparents. That's what I wrote down as like what I would be craving during this movie. Some nice sliced cheddar cheese and like some wheat thins and like a few rogue grapes. Because I feel like that's like basically what like there was no charcuterie like in 2002.
This was very topical because we had family friends kind of last minute stop by my house, and we don't get a lot of visitors. So I was like, oh my God, I'm like, what am I going to put out? I'm like, I need to put out crackers and cheese, but I don't have any cheese. So then
that is tough when you don't have anything.
Yeah, when this scene came up, I was like, this was me, and like a last minute scramble to like present something, but it was all good. I made sour cream and onion and potato chips. Like everyone loves that. It was a hit.
You can't go wrong. I also don't like Chardonnay, so this didn't even make me want Chardonnay. I don't know. Maybe I've just had mostly bad Chardonnay.
I don't know. I'm not a big white wine drinker in general, but this movie, maybe it was just because of the portrayal of it, made me like not. I'm like, I never want to drink white wine after watching this movie.
Yeah, I can't think of anything food related that comes to mind.
There was another drink though that I wanted. It looked like he shared a glass of scotch with Marcus Skinner.
Oh,
yes.
His hand was kind of covering it, so it was vague, but I mean, having a glass of scotch with like a college professor just feels, it feels very like on point, but something that I would enjoy, having like a nice deep discussion about life and writing.
Yeah. I was thinking also, they didn't show this, but because everyone was probably just drinking beer out of Solo cups, but a beach bonfire with some s'mores would have been a nice inclusion in this movie.
It would have been.
We've had a lot of s'mores discussions, I think, in recent episodes.
We haven't even done the Sandlot yet. And
I know. I'm waiting for the big moment. Yeah.
One other snack I spotted at the end was the two friends were eating what looked to be cheese doodles not out of a bag, but out of that kind of like cylinder.
Yes.
And the other one was eating goldfish. Not a huge fan of either of them. Like,
yeah,
I would eat a cheese doodle. I've never been a big goldfish girl, though.
I don't love goldfish. I think that pizza goldfish are better, like flavored.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had those.
They're not that great, but at least I think goldfish are too bland. Lisa has always been a Chex Mix gal. You were a very good snack buyer. You always picked the good snacks. If we needed a snack person, you should be the person that was sent to the store. Yeah, you
I feel like you do have cheese in your fridge ready to go if somebody stops by.
I do.
Yeah,
I
really do.
actually currently have cheddar and Colby Jack in my refrigerator right now.
You could definitely put together a nice welcome.
Definitely.
If any of your kids have a last minute admissions issue,
you'll
be hooked up. Yeah. All right, what should we do for our dinner party this week? Michelle and I were discussing doing more of like a cafeteria meetup for our school season to ring true, but we don't spend much time in the high school for this episode, so it feels a little wrong.
Like, what would be the setting if we're not going to do that setting?
I think it would be at Sean's house.
At Cindy's house.
Yeah. At like her island. Her 2000s kitchen island.
There's so many barn animals, which was a very early 2000s thing, but I feel like they was like really represented.
Yeah. It feels like the meetup spot. Everyone ends up there at the end of the movie. So
on the patio? Outside?
Yeah, that's a good idea. By the pool.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful view out there, I do have to say.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
Yeah, and they didn't even show any oranges in this movie, and it's the cover of the DVD. Big miss. Okay, so we'll each give each other one person, and we have to decide what they're bringing to a party at Sean's, a potluck at Sean's. This takes place in the spring. It's before the end of the school year, but it doesn't need to be specific to a season. It can really be anytime. Okay, Lisa, I'm gonna give you. So I'll give you someone. You give Michelle someone. Michelle will give me someone, and then I'll collectively decide. I'm going to give you Mona. That feels right.
Michelle, I'm going to give you Krista. Leslie Mann.
Love.
Okay. And Laura, I'm going to give you Kip, played by Nat Faxon, who was the guy who was kind of flirting with Ashley at the college party.
Okay. In his sweater in the middle of April. This checks out.
I think Mona, my first impression, I want to say she's definitely going to bring a vegetarian dish, but I'm not too sure about that because after her interaction with Lance, I just feel like things changed and like maybe she eats a rack of ribs, like who knows? But to play it safe, I could see her making like a nice couscous side. I could also see her bringing a bottle of red wine, like a Bordeaux. Like, I think she's going to bring something with like a very like artsy label. And then I could also see her making like a homemade dessert.
Mona, showing up.
Maybe she would make like individual creme brulees for all. I could just see her fully committing.
This is impressive.
I like this a lot. I especially like the artsy, full-bodied wine that feels very on brand for her.
Yes.
We don't get a ton of screen time with Krista. We know that she's a mom, but maybe she's a young mom. She still wants to go out and party. So I'm thinking she's only bringing 2 things with her, and those 2 things would be a tray full of Jell-O shots and a bag of veggie straws.
That's perfect.
Love it.
I don't think she has time for anything else. I don't think she cares to impress anyone. Those are just 2 things that she would enjoy. So that's what she is showing up with.
Yeah, Bud told her to bring something and she delivered, even though he's not even part of the party, but he's telling her that he has to entertain these strangers. I think Kip is a super over the top person. He's the type of person that really wants to impress people, yet he's not the best cook. But I think that he's showing up with ingredients, and he asks Cindy if he can use her kitchen, and she doesn't have many pots because she doesn't cook. But I think that he's making like a coq au vin, like a fancy French chicken, which like uses red wine, so it's perfect that the Bordeaux's there. So he's dipping into the, the ingredients that the other guests are bringing, and he's trying to make a really impressive dish because he knows that Ashley might stop by and he really wants to win her back. And I think that he like feeds the whole party, but he does not do it well.
I think I was thinking that like everyone would love the food, but not him. Like it wouldn't. It would kind of like backfire. His plan would backfire, and everyone would be enjoying the food, but like giving him zero acknowledgement.
Yeah, and I think that they would all be making fun of his turtleneck because they would tell him he didn't seem to know where Orange County was. He makes a point to say, "Oh, I think I've heard of that." I think if you go to school in California, you know where Orange County is.
Just you wait until like 5 years from now, you will hear about Orange County a lot. Did you guys also spot very recently passed Films at Table star at the party, at the college party?
Yes.
Yes.
Janice Ian. She's crossing over.
Lizzie Kaplan.
Yes. She has one very impressive line. She says that she is horny and ready to find some cuties at this party. So they're really giving her a lot to work with.
Did you guys notice that I feel like she didn't even age from the time? Like I was looking at her face and I'm like, okay, so she was in this in 2002 and then she was in Mean Girls, which was 2006. Or is that right? Or 2005?
Yeah.
I just felt like, I don't know. I was just like, and then she was in New Girl too. And I feel like she just doesn't age. Yeah. She just looks the same. Like
I want her skincare routine. Whatever she's doing, keep it up. Lisa, so we are going to give you 10 this or that's. I'll start with mine. Would you rather be a professional surfer or professional writer?
I think writer.
Would you rather have Chardonnay with Cindy or a Scotch with Marcus?
I'm going to go with Cindy. I feel like that conversation would be gold.
Would you rather give Lance pee for his patrol officer or bandage up Bob's head?
I would give pee for the parole officer. No question.
Wow.
I was
You could go to jail.
When that is true. Yeah. That is true, but I probably wouldn't be thinking about that at the time. Yeah, oh my gosh, those bandages. I just was like so grossed out by that whole scene that like some ceramic figurine fell on his bald head. I was like, this poor guy.
I think I just love the physical comedy of Lupe Cindy's just like, just wrap it around his entire head. That just makes it so chaotic. Okay, would you rather burn down an admissions building or kidnap a dean?
I guess I'd rather kidnap the dean. Like I feel like even though that's still a pretty bad offense, like at least you could be more like stealth about it. But the burning down the building, I feel like that's just terrifying. Yeah.
Would you rather wear a butterfly tank or a purple floral skirt?
A butterfly tank. I hate that skirt.
I love butterfly tanks now. I'm so happy they're back.
Passion.
All right, Michelle.
Okay, I'll start with one I had. I was almost going to nix this because it was very similar to Laura's, but curious if your answer will remain in alignment with your last answer. In order to get into your dream college, would you rather drug the head of admissions or break into the admissions building?
Probably drug that.
You really have it out for this guy.
Yeah, because I don't know, like thinking about physically breaking into a building is just like, for me, like the like recovering rule follower that I am, cannot fathom like breaking into an institution.
All right. Would you rather live with Bud, Krista, and Jake or Cindy, Bob, and Lance?
Probably Bud, Krista, and Jake, because I feel like you could like duck out, get some maybe personal space there a little bit. And even though Jake is like pretty wild, I mean, I have kids already, so I feel like I'm definitely fit to weather the storm that is having a hyperactive child.
Jake is sweet. He just needs some
He
cereal
is.
and some
He
juice.
is,
Some
and he needs a
Yeah.
friend
Yeah,
to play
I know.
with.
Poor Jake.
Would you rather participate in a choreographed cheerleading routine in the middle of the school campus or go surfing?
Probably surfing. I would just get over my fear. There is a nothing. Performances, cheerleaders, I can't be involved in any of that. Flash mob type dancing, no thanks. I'm good.
Would you rather wear a shirt that says loser or talk to the hands?
I guess talk to the hand. I feel like it's like I don't know. I feel like I'm trying to think of like myself now walking around like that, and I feel like if it was like loser, it's like so angsty. But talk to the hand is just funny. It's an old phrase that people used to use all the time. So it will probably be trendy now.
We still have not launched our merch store, but when we do, both of those
Watch out.
shirts will be on there.
We'll make them. For those of you watching this on YouTube and you're seeing us in different outfits, we had a kind of last minute scheduling change. So Laura will tell you our updated schedule and reveal what movie we're going to be covering next. And my outfit is a little bit of a teaser.
Yeah. So we're teasing this out, and we are very happily staying in California for this next release. So we're going to be covering Superbad.
With special guest who's also here with us.
Yes. I thought it was a little bit obvious, but Dom will be joining us. We know that he loves his school-related movies, so get ready.
I like to put toes and toes.